Good evening, and thank you for joining us here on BNC Prime Weekend. I'm Brittany Jones. Well, BNC continues to follow the Biden administration's plan for the first 100 days for Black America. One of the president's major promises is criminal justice and police reforms. You may remember BNC first brought you the New York City Mayoral Candidate Wright Jr. back in December. He was wrongfully convicted of drug charges in 1991 and sentenced to life in prison. His story inspired an ABC series show called For Life. I spoke to Wright about what he believes the Biden administration will need to do to make changes for Black and brown people in the criminal justice system. Isaac, it's good to have you back with us here on BNC.
It's glad to be back. Thank you for having me.
So we know President Biden has laid out many plans on how to reshape the criminal justice system and police reform. I've been digging through those plans. He said we need to rethink who we're sending to jail, how we treat those in jail, and how we help them get to the health care, education, jobs, and housing that they need to successfully rejoin society after they serve their time. What do you think about this statement?
Well, I think it's an incredible first start. I think that there also needs to be concentration on having people in the proper positions to be able to actually think differently. There's a difference between laws that's going to be able to help people who are incarcerated and people who are going through the criminal justice system, and the people that is capable of following those laws. So yes, I think it's a great start, but we also need to take a really, really good look at the records of the individuals that are in those positions of power.
So President Biden also says our criminal justice system cannot be just unless we root out the racial, gender, and income-based disparities in the system. So what do you think has to be done in order to change that?
I think again, that's a first good start. For me, with personal experience in the system, for me, it always goes back to the people. I think first and foremost, we have to have judges that are able to keep the balance of powers even. Nobody, no matter what your gender, no matter what your financial status is, the resources of the government. They have manpower around the clock. They have unlimited resources. And so while I think those positions that President Biden has taken is a great first step, I think he needs to take another look at the people in leadership, at the quality of the judges, and make sure that they are in positions and they have the wherewithal to keep the balance of powers between the government and the individual man even.
So talking about leadership, some of the things you want to focus on if you become the next mayor of New York are criminal justice and police reform. What kind of help do you think you need from the Biden administration as mayor to see those changes through?
Well, the first thing, in answering that question, the first thing that I think is extremely important to mention is that, I was a victim of President Biden's criminal justice policies, those policies that ushered in mass incarceration. I was a victim of that. When I went to prison, I was a part of that, lock them up, throw away the key mentality that was sweeping through the system at that time. And so, I look at it as a means, as New York City's next mayor, I look at it as a means to be able to sit down with President Biden and to be able to give him on the essential changes that need to be made from within. So what you're looking at is the victim, and you're looking at the person, the president of the United States, who was a part of that problem, now in a position to be able to fix it. And so I think that the insight that I can give him on how to fix the system from within is going to be priceless.
Yes, definitely priceless. And he talked about reducing the number of folks in jails and prisons and also reduce crime, hoping that the funds saved from mass incarceration could in turn help those communities instead. Why is that so important to Black and brown people?
Well, it's especially important in New York City, where you have tens of thousands of Black and brown people who are incarcerated all across the city, and you have law enforcement who are out there and who are making arrests for very, very minor infractions. And so I think the first thing that has to be done is there has to be an assessment within law enforcement. There has to be communication between the mayor and the federal government and the Biden administration on the funds that it's going to take to be able to retrain these law enforcement officers to use more discretion in who they're going to lock up and who they're just going to give a death ticket to for an appearance. Because once you weed out all the minor infractions and you concentrate more on the serious crimes, you unload the burden that's on the prison system. Those things are going to cost money, and specifically for New York, it's going to cost. It's going to take dialogue between New York's next mayor and the Biden administration to make that happen.
And moments ago, you just brought up your story. Your story has been so inspiring to others, and I know that the criminal justice reform is very important to you and even myself, since my own dad's story reflects yours. He also became a paralegal in prison and was sent off to prison for long term in the 90s. I think it was like a year before your actual case happened. So watching your story on the For Life show, and when I see the little girl Jazz who was waiting on her father, reminds me so much of myself. Biden has pledged to end mandatory minimum sentences, and we know you experienced that, got yourself out within 9 years. What do you think that needs to be done in terms of this being possibly a game changer if he makes this happen with the minimum mandatory being done with?
I think changing the mandatory minimum sentence is an incredible, profound step towards relieving not only the injustice but the burden on the criminal justice system. One of the things that was a conduit for mass incarceration is the ability to demand and mandate that a person stay in prison for a minimum of 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, minimum of life. And so giving that discretion back to the judges and what that sentence should be is a profound and exciting move that I believe President Biden is making. But, I always have to end it by saying, if the right judge is not sitting on the bench, we're still going to have these problems with mass incarceration. We need the right people on the bench that is even-handed, that understands how to set aside their own personal biases, and to when they look at a prisoner, even though they're not the same people, but when they look at a person that's accused of a crime and getting ready to be sentenced, they see themselves a little bit in that person, and they understand, they utilize the facts, the person's background, and the issue with criminal justice in general, bound decisions in the law where we have a person that is being punished in equal amounts to what his crime was, and not being doubled down on because the law demands it.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because my dad, he got 20 years, served 17. It was during that same time period as I mentioned before. So just the thought of the fact that people can actually, get a fair shot at this point. I mean, what does that say to you in terms of now the president has the opportunity to help change something that happened under his watch many years ago?
It tells me that he understands the mistakes that he's made, and he's seeking to atone for it as this nation's president. I mean, there's nothing negative to say about that. I think that's a positive move in the right direction, and I believe that as long as he's continuing to go in that direction, that in terms of criminal justice reform, I think the system will change, and I think things will be better within the system for the average person, that is moving through the system and being punished for a crime that he committed, and those that have not committed crimes. It's set up in a way where it can be easily resolved, and these people can not be caught up in it, for one, and if they are, released immediately.
You think immediate change is needed?
Immediate change is needed. Change is needed yesterday, and the day before that, and the day before that. And President Biden, he's coming in late, and he represents a system that's slow, because the things that he's proposing is slow coming, but as long as it's sure, we're going to be okay. And it's never too late to make these changes, and I think it's a great thing. But definitely, it's needed immediately. It was needed yesterday, the day before, and the day before that.
And lastly, for you, I just want to know this: how did this help you, kind of going through this process, help you reunite with your family? What was that like for you?
It's a reintegration and rebonding with family is a very, very difficult thing when you're in prison. It's a struggle, and that struggle lasts for years and years and years and years. Sometimes it never gets back to where it was. And so that's a very complex question in the sense that I am still, to this very, very day, rebonding with my family. In each and every one of them, we've always been close. We're still close. But you know, when you go in prison, you go into prison with a certain type of relationship with people that you grew up with and you've lived with all your life. And then when you have a gap of 7, 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, 20 years, where these people have moved on, their personalities have evolved and changed, and you come out, you're coming out to that personality 10 years ago. And so it takes a lifetime to rebuild that. And so it's, you know, it's a sad thing, it's a tragic thing, but it's a reality that everybody coming out of prison has to deal with, and their family members. And I'm still dealing with it today.
And I certainly understand from my own personal experience, but working on it with my dad as well. But I am so thankful to be able to talk to you about this today. This is why we're doing this story, because we want people to see the realness of why this reform is so important. So Isaac, we appreciate having you back on the show and can't wait to have you back.
Thank you. I'm ready to come, and you know, you're willing, I'm ready.
Thank you for your time today.
You're very welcome. Take care.
And you can count on the Black News Channel each day as we look at Biden's actions on the economy, education, the environment, and criminal justice and voting. Many presidencies since Franklin D. Roosevelt have been measured by their first 100 days, and we will be right here with the first 100 days for Black America.